Alright, so I've built the basic frame. I'm now going to attach the flight controller to the PWM outputs, attach the power, attach a GPS and compass. I guess this one normally comes with a Holybro GPS, but I haven't got one that's properly wired up, so I'm going to use this here 3, which is a CAN GPS and compass. That's pretty easy to set up, so I'll set that up. It's got a nice little pole here, and then for the receiver I'm going to set up an ELRS receiver. I don't actually have any copters flying with the ELRS at the moment. They're all TBS CRSF based, but I think this would be quite a nice exercise because a lot of people are trying to use ELRS and run into a lot of problems. So I'll set that up, show you how to set that up. But first I have to flip the power distribution board around, because what's happened is I want to mount this way with all of the PWM outputs at the back here, and I've got the the power lead here, but the power lead needs to plug into this plug here, which is at the other end, and it's just a little bit too short. So what I'm going to do is flip the power distribution board around so that the battery lead is at the back. I'm hoping that I can do that without fully disassembling it, but this is the inevitability of drone assembly, is something goes wrong and you have to disassemble. But small fingers and good tools, and should all be fine. Right, welcome back. I did an entire video without recording the sound, so having to have another go. So in this video I'm going to look at just the initial setup of the Pixhawk 6X for this Holybro X4, and in particular I'm going to set up the radio receiver, which is an ELRS module that you can see there, and also a here 3, I think it is, which is a drone CAN GPS. Obviously you can get built-in GPSs as well to use. So what I'm going to do first, so I've connected to, you can see in Mission Planner here, I've connected to the flight controller, and I'm just going to reset everything to default. So config, reset to default. Do you wish to? Yes, I do wish to. What this does is it actually sets format version to 0, and then that forces the flight controller to read all the parameters. So if we go back, you should see all the parameters look like they're 0, which is good. And the first thing we have to do is set the frame type, because, so this is setup, mandatory hardware, frame type, because that gets set to undefined for reasons I don't really fully understand. Maybe it's, feels like quad should be the default. Anyway, so I'm going to select a quad here, X, so quad X, so that's good. That's the correct Holybro type. And then what I'm going to do is just set up the motors correctly. So I like to do this first, so just to get things roughly right. So we've got the motor set up here, servo output, and so when you select a frame type, the servos are set automatically, but due to some issue with Mission Planner, the properties are not reread, so I'm going to disconnect, reconnect with Mission Planner, and you should see motors 1 to 4. Now I've actually installed the Pixel 6X BD-Shot software because I'm going to use BD-Shot on these UFCs to get telemetry feedback to get a better tune. And since this is 4.4, for that to work, I've got to put the motors on the aux channel. So basically 9. I'm going to do 9 through 12. So I'm going to make 9 motor 1, 10 motor 2, 11 motor 3, 12 motor 4. Then I'm going to just disable all of these. Disable, disable, disabled, disabled. Okay, so got my 4 motors there. And I actually want to use D-Shot, BD-Shot in fact, on motors 1 through 4. So I'm going to do that via the BL Heli setup. So it's these servo BLH parameters, and I'm going to set the O type, which is the output type. I'm going to set this to D-Shot 300 now for quads, racer quads. D-Shot 600 is my go-to protocol, but that can be, the speed of that and the narrowness of the pulse width can be problematic on longer cable runs because you can get a bit of noise and interference. But D-Shot 150 can be a little bit dicey with BD-Shot, so I'm going to go, because the pulses are so wide, and BD-Shot adds an extra. It's basically 2 pulses, one going out, one coming back. There's not a lot of space in between, so it makes the duty cycle of the output very high. So I'm going to go for D-Shot 300. It's not a very big quad, so I think that'll be fine. So that's my output type. And then I need to select the mask of channels that this is the output type for. So pick up the bit mask here, and if you remember, I set channels 9 through 12. That gives the magic number 3840. I'm also going to set BLH auto to 1, which means pass through can work, and I'm going to leave D-Shot ESC for now, but I'm pretty sure these are BL-LES. I'll find that out later, so I might set this a bit later. So I'm going to write out those parameters. And then the next thing I'm going to do is calibrate the accels. So go to Setup, Mandatory Hardware, Accel Calibration. And this is really, on these bigger copters, it's really important to do this with the flight controller before you mount it. It's much easier to do this with the thing on the bench, especially these big blocky ones. So I'm going to calibrate accel and then put it through each of the angles. So I'm going to calibrate accel. So it's place vehicle level. It is level, so I'm going to click. Now it wants me to put it on the left. And the camera is in the way. The camera connector is in the way, so this will have to do, I think, roughly right. It's not very upright. There we go, it's roughly right. That's right, that should be a little bit easier. Right side is there. Wants to fall over. That's my solder again, stop it falling over. Put those down, that's easy enough. So I'm going to mount this the regular way, so the arrow here pointing towards the front of the vehicle. So nose down, nose up. Wants to fall over again. See a little box there. Nose up. And then on its back. Trying not to disturb the fan. I think that'll do. Calibration successful. Perfect. So I'm going to reboot at that point. So can actually reboot by hitting Control F from this main screen, and I get this advanced pop-up, and there's a reboot Pixhawk thing here, so let's hit reboot Pixhawk. Yes, I'm sure. Can't reconnect. I'll reconnect myself. There we go. Okay, so rebooted, not getting any annoying messages about 3D calibration needed. So the next thing I'm going to do, so this, if we go to Setup, HWID, you can see the hardware that's installed. So we've got 3 IMUs, accel, gyros, 2 barrows, and this compass, a BMM 150, which is actually a Bosch compass. So I'm going to calibrate that while it's out of the vehicle. So we're going to set up mandatory hardware compass, BMM 150. And so what I'm going to do is start the calibration and then wave the flight controller in the direction of north. And I'll do that for each axis. I'm going to switch mics just so you can hear what I'm saying. So we'll start the calibration, I'll switch mics and start waving. So start. Alright, so switched mics and I'm going to face north and wave it. You can see the progress bar going. Face north with the left side, the right side, back, and the top, the bottom, and then because it's trying to get all angles, I find doing this upside down helps. Do each axis upside down. Of course, I've got quite a lot of metal here, which will be interfering with the compass calibration, but at least it'll give me a good starting point. There we go, and it's done. Alright. Okay, so it wants me to reboot, so I am going to reboot. Go back to Data, Control F, bring up the reboot Pixhawk. Yes, I do want to reboot. And reconnect. Good. And then what we should see is if I point it north, so if I point the arrow north, roughly, you should see in the HUD that it's north. Yeah, you can see north is roughly there. And then if I turn it east, it does go towards the east. Turn it west, it does go towards the west. So that is working, which is great. So compass is okay. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is, and you could do this first, but I like doing those sorts of things, get rid of the annoying messages. So the next thing, before I start plugging stuff in, is I'm just going to go through the initial setup page. So if we go back to setup, mandatory hardware, done frame type, I'm going to do this initial tune parameters. So what size are the props? I think they're probably 10-inch props. I'm going to be flying on 6S, I would say. Hopefully they are 6S capable ESCs. I'm going to go for 6S. And 4.2 and 3.3, I'm going to leave those. So these are important to set because this does sort of battery sag compensation. So you sort of, it affects the way the vehicle is tuned. It is LiPo. I'm not using T-Motor Flame ESCs. Add suggested settings for 4.0 and up. Yeah, probably will add those. And calibrate initial parameters. Okay, so it's given me some parameters here, which I'm just going to accept. It's going to be a gyro filter of 42, probably okay for this size of quad. Everything else looks okay. So, yeah. Good. Okay. So, done that. Radio calibration. So now I need to plug in the radio. So I'm just going to switch to the other camera so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is an ELRS module. This is a Maytech ELRS module. It's the same one as this. ELRS R24D. I think there were some issues with older revs of these related to heat as it heated up. There's some issue with the frequency. So the frequency changed, and that meant you could get radio failsafes, but I believe that's all been fixed. So we'll find out whether we get radio failsafes or not. So this is, I've soldered these headers on here because it comes with a bare, probably can't see there, but it just comes with bare pinholes. So I've soldered these headers on, and these pins are, if you can see, we've got ground, 5V TX RX, and I think that's the way the TBS gear, I think that's the same order for the TBS gear. Now, of course, this won't plug into one of these, but what will is these JST, I think GH I want to say these are, I think they're GH or ZH, I think they're GH. So this is a 6-pin GH plug. This came from Creotech. This is quite a nice, this is a nice thing. So it's like a converter from 6-pin to 6 channels. Okay, I've just switched the view so you can see a bit more easily. So I've got my ELRS ground 5V TX RX, and then this JST GH connector, which is courtesy of Creotech. Don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but anyway, it's good. So 6-pin, and with these 6-pin, with these, well, all of these JST GH connectors, 5V is always on one end and ground is on the other end, helpfully labelled with red and black here. And then I happen to know that TX is next to 5V, and then RX is the next one. So on these will fit on a telemetry port. So I've got telemetry 1 here, so it'll fit in a telemetry 1 port. Here you can see fit there like that, and I'm going to plug .5V into 5V, which is this one here, ground into ground, and then very important, I want TX to go to RX and RX goes to TX. So TX, I happen to know, is this yellow one next to 5V, so that's TX on here, which needs to go to RX on here, which is helpfully labelled as this one, and then RX on here is the next one over, the white one, and it goes to TX on here. Get it in. Yeah. Oops. There we go. And
The remaining 2 pins are clear to RTS and CTS, so if you've got hardware flow control you could use those, but they are not used by this one. And so I'm going to plug it in. Probably hot plugging is probably not the best thing to do in the world, but anyway, it's okay. Plugged it in. You can see it's running there. Now I'm actually going to power on my transmitter because otherwise it will go into bootloader mode. This is one of the things. So I've got easy model 2.4 gigahertz here. Should be bound. No, it seems not. 2.4 gigahertz. And it's gone into bootloader mode. You see, this is what happens when you go to, well, sorry, Wi-Fi mode. So you can actually connect to it over Wi-Fi if you do this. So if that happens, you've got to repower. So I'm going to repower the flight controller. There we go. Repower it, and it's flashing. And this time, oh no.
Telemetry lost.
Okay.
Telemetry recovered.
Okay, so this time it's gone red, and this is an ELRS feature. You have to turn on your transmitter before you turn on the receiver. Forgot about that. So I thought it was bound. So now it's bound. Not going to have to bind it again. And because I had the transmitter turned on first, it bound correctly. Okay, so I've got that connected to telemetry 1 here. So I'm just going to switch back to the computer just to configure that.
Okay, so I've connected, and if you remember, I plugged it into telemetry 1, so I'm going to configure the serial port for telemetry 1. So telemetry 1 is actually on serial port 1. You can see serial port 1, protocol, telemetry 1 port. And what I'm going to set this to, well, I'm going to set it to RC in, which is protocol 23. I don't need to set anything else. Now, CRSF is a serial protocol. You can't use RC in interrupt mode because it needs two-way communication, so you have to use RC in protocol. So I set this to 23, which is valid for all radio protocols. And I'm going to go back and reboot. Yes, I want to reboot.
Telemetry lost.
And if I've rebooted, here we go. CRSF3. It's actually ELRS. Hasn't quite figured out that it's ELRS. I don't know why that is. Oh, here we go. ELRS link rate 500. H396. Now, the link rate of 500 is too fast, really, for RDU pilots. You're going to get radio fail-safes if you do that. So I am going to change that on the transmitter. So tracer, TBS tracer runs at 250 Hertz. And so I'm going to set it to 250 Hertz. So I'll just switch over to the other camera again.
Mics. Here's my transmitter. So I'm going to go to the Express LRS Lua script, and it says it is 250 Hertz, so that should be fine. So maybe it's lying about that. So I shall exit from that. Which I can never remember how to do. be a little exit thing here. Yeah, it's a bit of a janky menu, I have to say. So you're going to have to. Yeah, none of these work. Okay.
Receiver still connected.
Receiver off. Receiver on again.
Yahoo telemetry ready. Welcome to OpenTX. RF signal critical.
Alright, so that's working now. And the last thing I'm going to do
on this is I'm just going to set the RC options for ELRS. So there's a couple of options you can set here. There's a bit mask of options, so I'm going to select 420K board for the ELRS protocol. So I'm going to select that because the CRSF protocol is 416666 baud. That's the correct CRSF speed, baud rate, but ELRS, because they didn't know, they didn't have access to the spec, they guessed by looking at a SAIDI trace that it was 420K baud. And so pretty much all ELRS RXs are set to 420K baud by default, and although it's a small difference, you can get failsafes if you don't have that. So this is a new feature in 4.4, so I'm going to set that. And then I'm also going to suppress CRSF for ELRS, and then I'm also going to use pass-through. So this is the ARPU pass-through. That just gives me a few more messages on my receiver. So I've got 8992 there, write out those parameters, and you can hear it buzzing away now that it's got ARPU set. So that is ELRS. There we go, ELRS set up. Perfect. Alright. So the next thing I'm going to do is set up this here 3. I might turn off my receiver in the meantime. So let's switch back.
Okay, so
Receiver still connected.
I'm going to set up this here 3, and this is actually a CAN device, you can see. You can also plug in Holybro ship with these GPSs that just plug in this nice big GPS port here, you can see, and it also integrates with the LEDs and the safety switch, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use this here 3 because I've got like 3 of them, and just show you how to set up a CAN device like this. So I'm going to plug into CAN 1. CAN 1 is here. Again, probably shouldn't be hot plugging. I will power that down. Plug into CAN 1 here. Again, GST GH. Plug that in the flight controller, and you can see it's got power because it's got these lights on. But then it's got what it should get is the arming, or the pre-arm LED sequence, which is not, because it's not configured correctly. So I'm going to make sure that that's configured correctly. So I've got CAN plugged in there. So I'm going to go back and configure that.
Alright, it seemed to have been on 2 mics at the same time, but that should be okay. Looks like this one's working. Okay, so back. I'm going to reconnect here. Go to config, and let's go to CAN. So you can see CAN D1 protocol, CAN D2 protocol both set up to 1 already. But the thing that isn't set is the P1 driver or the P2 driver. So I'm going to set the P1 driver to 1, which is first driver. And that should enable CAN on the CAN 1 port. So let's do that. Then I'm going to go, oh, let's disconnect, reconnect again because some new properties will have come up. Then if I go to setup, you can select optional hardware, drone CAN, UAV CAN, and I'm going to click on MAV link CAN 1. And I think it needs a power cycle, so I'm going to go back to data. So let's do a reboot. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. Go back to setup. If I can, there we go. Okay, so we've got CAN devices now appearing, in particular my here. So I just needed a power cycle. Okay, so here is set up, and I think if we now go to hardware ID, you can see they've got UAV CAN here on the hardware ID as a compass. So it's connected okay. The next thing to do is, and you can see that the ELRS has gone into Wi-Fi mode. The next thing to do is enable the compass. Well, the compass has already been detected, but enable the GPS and the LEDs for CAN. So the first thing is GPS. So I'm going to go to GPS. Type, GPS type. Okay, so I actually need to select drone CAN as the GPS type. So this is type 9. I'll write that out. And the other thing I'm going to do is select the LED type. So NTF LED types. Set bit mask. Okay, so we've got a bit mask. This is the LEDs that it'll run. But one of the ones I want to use is drone CAN. There we go. I'm going to click on drone CAN, write that out. And might require a reboot. So again, Control F, reboot Pixhawk, yes. Close. Now, moment of truth. There we go. Now you can see yellow LEDs flashing. There we go. So yellow LEDs flashing, you've got the little calibration sign, and hopefully as well GPS. There we go, GPS specified as UAV CAN. So there we go, we have GPS information, config information, we've got the lights flashing. Perfect. Now I can't calibrate this compass without it being on the vehicle because it needs to, well, I could do, I suppose. It could be a bit cheeky because the compass calibration needs to be relative to the flight controller frame. So I could probably hold it on the flight controller and calibrate the compass. I think that's worth a shot. So let's go to setup, compass, and got a UAV can there. So I'm going to have to see which way this is facing. So turn on my mic again.
Alright, so here's the copter. Here is the copter. And my here is going to go, it says it's got a little pointer, so it wants to go that way around. That wants to be the front. And that'll work quite nicely, I think, if you can see that. So I'm going to mount it on the back here. So I think I'll just mount it in the natural orientation. So I'll get the copter out of the way. So I'm going to hold that on there, like that. Again, this is just to sort of get going. You can do a decent calibration in the air using MagFit, but this just saves waving large vehicles around. So I'm going to hold that on there, facing the right direction, and I'm going to click on Calibrate. Here we go. And you can see the lights are flashing this time. So I'm going to calibrate that way. Do a bit of upside down. Back to front. Trying to not to move the orientation too much. Okay, that's one done. Oops, that's kidding. Two done. Perfect. There we go. Two calibrated.
And it's asking me to reboot the autopilot, so I'm going to do that. Okay, there we go. What I did there. Okay, so I'm going to reboot the autopilot. Okay, reboot. Yes. Good, and all happy. So I've got a compass, I've got a GPS, I've got radio receiver. I switched the power distribution board, so the next thing to do is mount the flight controller and the compass and the radio receiver and start to tune. So I'll do that in the next video. Thanks for watching.